Hey Scribblers, Greg Gountanis here, mystery writer helping you on your writing journey. I release videos every week, so make sure you subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Today's video, Scrivener for Dummies. I've been using Scrivener for a few years now, and it's really helped my writing. It has helped me speed things up and automate my process, and it really helps take away the distractions when I'm working on a project. So in today's video, I'm going to set you up with the basics to using Scrivener. I'm going to do an on-screen demo. Scrivener isn't that complex. I know a lot of writers out there are sort of hesitant to try it out, but have no fear. In this video, I'll take you through all the basics to get started with whatever project you're working on. So let's get to it. To hit Scrivener, and the first thing that pops up is a thing about templates. So I'm going to go down to fiction. There's novel with parts, and short stories. Let's just do novel. Go to choose. And then it'll ask you where you want to save this sample. So save it wherever you want. I'm going to title this sample novel. Click create. Then it's going to load up the Scrivener interface. So if you're a little freaked out at the colors right now, it's probably just because I have my Scrivener in dark mode, because it's just a little bit easier on the eyes. You can mess with the appearance of Scrivener by going up to Scrivener appearance, and then you can toggle between dark and light. So yours might look something like this right now, but just for me, as a matter of personal preference, I just like keeping it at dark. So I'm going to do that. Now, before we get started on how to work up a sample novel through Scrivener, I think it's helpful to know like the terminology a little bit and the different ways that they refer to the interface. So here on the left, this is what's called the binder, and this is where you have your chapters, your scene, your characters, your setting. You can do a bunch of different things here on the left. Here in the middle pane is what's called the editor, and this is where you'll actually be typing your novel or your short story or whatever you happen to be working on. And then this little pane on the right portion is what's called the inspector. Now, if you don't want all three of these portions, this is the default view, and I just recommend going with the default view. But if for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable having the three different panes here, you can go up to this folder here on the upper left, click the arrow. You can go all the way down to layouts, and then you can adjust the layouts however you want. If you just want the editor, you can click editor and you'll just see the editor. But for now, let's just stick with the default view. So one way to conceptualize Scrivener, it's basically like an online notebook that is going to house your novel or your short story or whatever you're working on. So here on the left, you have your manuscript, and let's go ahead and title it sample novel, just like we titled the file. And then you'll notice right under the sample novel, you have a blue folder that says chapter, and right under that you have a scene. So all of your chapters are going to be in these blue folders, and all the scenes are going to be in the scene. So if you want to add another chapter, for example, you would just highlight chapter, come up to this little green arrow here, click it and put new folder, and then that is going to let you put in a new chapter. So we could put chapter 2, and then let's go back and title this chapter 1. And then if you want to add a new scene, under each chapter, you would just highlight the chapter, go back to this little green plus sign, and go to new text, and that's going to be your new scene. So that's one of the cool things with Scrivener, is that you can write things out of order. If that's kind of your writing style, you can just write, one day you can write chapter 1, the other day you can do chapter 2, or for example, if you want to just get started on chapter 50, you just put chapter 50, and you can just sort of toggle the order around. You can just mess with it in a bunch of different ways. So that's kind of one of the cool things with Scrivener, is you don't necessarily have to do it in a linear fashion, versus if you are using Microsoft Word or something, a lot of times it's kind of difficult to be jumping around just because of the nature of the software. So that's what I like about Scrivener. But yeah, so let's start off with how do you actually write stuff in Scrivener. So here we have chapter 1, we have the scene. Now you'll notice that I have chapter 1 highlighted, but I don't really have a space over here to start typing. That's because there's 3 different views within this little editor portion here. So if you notice, right now it's on the corkboard, and that's kind of one way you can outline stuff. The other way is you can do it in Outliner, and over here is the scrivenings or the document. So the default is actually over here all the way on the left. So this is sort of the traditional look for Scrivener. So let's keep it on this for right now. So say we want to start our first scene of our novel, right? So let's just click on our scene. We can just start typing away. So we'll just type something randomly like, this is a sample novel for Scrivener. And if you notice, in your inspector portion, for each scene, it gives you the ability to write a little synopsis or some notes for everything that you're writing. So if you're the type of person that's a plotter and you want to sort of create little index cards along the way, this is one way to do that. So I could write here in my scene section, I could say, this is chapter 1, a cool mystery starts, right? Whatever it happens to be for your story. And notes, I don't often use notes. I kind of use the synopsis portion. We can just collapse the notes for right now. But if you do want to use notes, this would be the little quadrant you can put them in. But yeah, let's collapse the notes. And then if you go back to this corkboard view that we were talking about earlier, and we go up to chapter 1, now you see on the corkboard we have our little synopsis for that first scene. This is chapter 1, a cool mystery starts. So it's kind of neat, because if you're going through your whole novel and you're writing little synopses here in the little inspector portion, by the time you're done with everything, when you go to the corkboard, you're going to have a bunch of different index cards, and it's kind of a cool way to visualize it if you're the type of person that plots. But let's go back to the editor, and you know, sometimes it'll disappear and you'll think that everything got deleted, but really what happened is it's not on. It has to go under the scene. So right here under chapter, nothing is here under your chapter because it's under your scene. So you know, you might get confused the first time you see that, but I just type everything under my scene, and that way, you know, however many scenes you have in your chapter, you just add the scenes that way. So if I have 3 scenes in my first chapter, I'm going to go up to this plus again, new text, and then, you know, we can just start typing. This is another scene for our sample novel. We go over here to the synopsis. Another cool thing happens. You know, this is just obviously for demonstration purposes. And then now let's go back to chapter, back to the corkboard, and now you can see our little index cards are starting to happen. And then you can also here title them as well. So you could title the scene, opening, second scene. So it's kind of neat where you can do little things like that. But let's go back for a moment to the actual writing part. So we're here and we want to write, you know, whatever we happen to want to write. If you notice up here above the editor, you have different font options. So you can pick, a variety of fonts. Right now, the default is Palatino, regular, size 13. I personally have never changed the font, but there's a whole bunch of different fonts you can do if you want something a little bit fancier or whatever you want to do. But one cool thing about Scrivener is what's called compose mode or composition mode. So if I want to just focus on my writing or that chapter or that scene, I can go to the upper right hand corner here where it says enter full screen with composition mode. I click that, and then you'll notice that everything on my screen is essentially blacked out. So over here we're in the lower right where it says background fade, you can have stuff on your desktop up here, or if you just want to focus only on the writing, you can black it all out. Here where it says paper width, you can mess with the width, like how big you want your screen to be while you're writing. Paper position, you can do left, right, or whatever. I just usually put it in center. And then the text scale, a lot of times when I'm in composition mode, I just kind of want to see everything as clearly as I can. So I usually, raise the text scale a lot to like 175 or something, or maybe even more. And then it's just, it's pretty neat. You can, type away. So this is a sample novel for Scrivener. You just type the same thing. This is a sample novel for Scrivener, right? And you just, keep typing away. And the cool thing is, if say you're on your computer typing and you get some sort of a message, like a text message, or you get something else like an email that comes in, when you're in composition mode, it actually blocks everything. I'm not sure if that's the default setting, but for me, I don't have any sort of text messages or email alerts that come in when I'm in composition mode. So it's really neat because I can just focus right on the writing and I don't have to worry about all these distractions. So I would recommend just enter composition mode versus just typing in the editor with the 3 different panes, and I think you'll be able to have a lot less distractions when you're writing. So if we want to get out of composition mode, all you have to do is hit escape on your computer, and then we're back to our 3-pane layout here. So that's how you write things in Scrivener. Now, we haven't talked a lot about the outliner mode. So we talked about like this is the writing mode, the corkboard, and then the outliner. But let me show you the outliner mode, and it's pretty cool if you're like a plotter like I am. But if we click on the outliner mode, you'll notice it has all these different fields: title, synopsis, label, status, section type, total target. So if we go up here to our chapter, which had the 2 sample scenes that we were working on, you'll notice that we have the 2 scenes that we wrote and then these different labels that they have here. So what I like to do is where it says label, I like to change that by click on label, go down to edit, and I like to change that to character name. And then you can each color can represent a different character. So if you're writing a novel with different point of views and you want to really keep things organized, like which chapter is going to be which character, Scrivener allows you to do that. So let's just put like a couple different characters. We have 2 sample scenes here that we put in, so let's just work on 2 different colors. So let's make red Mark, and let's make orange Lucy, right? Let's go to OK. Now if you notice, in my outliner mode, it changed to character name. So our opening scene, the cool mystery where it begins, right from our synopsis that we wrote, Let's go ahead and now click that to mark, right? So now we know when we look in the outliner mode, this scene is going to have Mark as the point of view character. And then for our second scene, where another cool thing happens, let's go to Lucy. So this is a cool way to organize everything by character. And if you're writing like a long novel and say you, are outlining it, or maybe you're pantsing it a little bit and you want to know, oh, how many chapters do I have with Mark, or how many with Lucy? How is it going, or whatever? You can just go to outliner mode and then you can see everything. Now, what I like to do though is I sort of like to enhance the data that is in the outliner field. So some of this I personally don't use, but it could be helpful to you. Like for example, here is your total target. So if you click on total target, you can alter how many words you want it to be, or total progress towards that goal. But I personally don't use those two. What I do is I go all the way here to the right, and there's a little arrow. I click on that, and I go to total word count. So I'm going to take out the total target, and now you can see it disappeared here. And I'm going to take out total progress, and I'm going to put total word count. And the reason I put that in there, and this might be helpful to you, is if you write chapters of a certain length, or you want to keep, say, short chapters for your thriller or something like that, you don't really want to have one chapter that's like 30 pages and another chapter that's 5 pages, right? If you're trying to keep some sort of a consistency with the pacing. So this is a cool way to keep everything in line in outliner mode. So if I'm writing, say, a chapter of around 4 pages each, that's going to be about 1,000 words, right? Because 250 pages, 250 words is about 1 page. So if I'm shooting for about 1,000 words per chapter, if I have the total words in the outline mode, I can just type up what I want to type up in my editor, and then I can come back to outliner and see, oh, I'm around 1,000 words for this chapter, or I'm a little bit short, or wow, I'm at 5,000 words and everything's going to be a little bit off rhythm. So, for those of you that really like the nitty-gritty details like that, that's another cool setting you can put in the outliner mode. The other thing I like to add here is, if we go back to our arrow, we can click custom, and where it says metadata, I'm going to click plus, and I'm going to add another custom setting for my outliner, and I'm going to add location. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go ahead and add one more. Click on the arrow, go down to custom, and I'm going to click the plus sign again, and I'm going to add time. Click OK. So I just added 2 different settings, or 2 custom settings for my outliner, and then I can go back to the arrow, and now you'll see all the way at the bottom I have the 2 custom options that I put in from earlier. So if I click those, now they appear on my outliner. So right here, location, we can say scene 1, Chicago, 9 a.m. Scene 2, scene 2, now we're in New York City, 1 p.m. So I kind of like doing that in my outliner, because it allows me to keep the settings in order if we have kind of like a detailed or complex piece of fiction that we're writing. So the outliner, I really use it a lot actually when I'm writing in Scrivener. So you're back. Let's go back to your editor, and you'll notice that when you click on the editor initially, it's going to have these little lines. That's because there's the editor and there's the Scrivenings mode. This is Scrivenings, where it'll keep everything on one page, but click on it again and you're back to the editor. So you're typing something, you know, let's just type some nonsense here, but yeah, you're typing it and you're in compose mode, typing it. Okay, you want to get out of compose mode, hit escape. And then after you type up your chapter or your scene or whatever, you want to see, oh, how is this looking overall in my project? Click here on the left for your chapter, go over to outline, and then you can just start to piece things together from there. So some people, you know, never touch the outliner at all when they're using Scrivener. Some people use it all the time. I tend to be the type of person that always uses it in conjunction with my editor and in conjunction with some of the other features. The corkboard, I don't really use it a lot, but the corkboard now, if you can see, it's color-coded because we labeled it with our characters. So now, you know, we know that Mark is this color, and then our other character is this color. So that's kind of another cool thing. It updates the colors. But, you know, some people never use the corkboard at all. Other people swear by it a lot. I personally never touch the corkboard, but this is just if you want to try it out, that's how you use the corkboard. So let's go back to the editor. Right, we're back here, and you'll notice here in the binder now that there's a characters and a places, right? Now what this is, basically it allows you, when you highlight characters and you click the plus sign, it gives you basically a sample character sketch. So Scrivener, like we spoke about earlier, it's basically a binder to house everything. It houses your novel, it houses your cover, it houses your research, it even houses your you know, your character studies and things like that. And that's basically what this character tab over here is. Once you hit characters and you hit the plus sign, it gives you this character sketch, and you can do this for every character in your story. So let's title this character sketch for Mark, right? And then you write up here, Mark, 30 years old, from Chicago, right? And then you can just go down and just fill all this out if you know you like to get that detailed about your characters before you start writing. You could write, you know, as you notice, the character sketch here has the role, the goal, description, personality, you know, conflicts. It's got a whole bunch of different things. You know, you can toggle around with that if you want, but basically you can do that. Now, what if we want to add another character sketch for Lucy, who was one of the characters we added earlier? We'll click here where it says Mark. Let's go up to the plus sign, character sketch, and then we could put Lucy, right? And then now for Lucy, you can toggle with that and just start, you know, adding random little tidbits, right? So you can play around with that. And then if you notice, while we were working on this in our editor, here now in our inspector pane, it says drop an image. So this is one of the cool things as well with Scrivener. You can house images and media files in Scrivener too. So say you have a specific visual in mind for what Lucy looks like. You got a picture of somebody you think resembles Lucy. You could just drag that image directly from your computer right onto here, or you can go to File and Import Files, Web page, and so forth, and you can import the image that way. So the characters is a cool little function as well. I tend to not use it that often, but it's a cool function that you can use, you know, depending on your style. So Since I don't use it that much, what I like to do to keep the binder less busy, so to speak, as you notice it looks pretty packed over here, is I'll just click this arrow, the character thing goes away. And the other thing you could do is if you want to get rid of it completely, you can drag it all the way to your trash and you don't have to use that. Now the next thing you'll notice here in the binder is places. And kind of like we did with our character study, if you come up and add a setting sketch, it does basically the same thing as the character study, but with the setting. So you can add the, where it's taking place. Let's put, Chicago bus stop or whatever. And then you can just start adding, random things related to the setting. And then once again, you can drag, images here or whatever you have to do. This is also like a feature I tend to not use that often, but try it out if it suits you or play around with it. It's a cool little feature. But what I'm going to do, just to, like I said, to make it less busy, I'm going to collapse that and then just drag it to the trash. Okay, and then the trash. We can collapse that as well so it doesn't look as big. Now the other thing you'll notice is you have notes. And notes, very similar to our character sketch and our setting sketch. These are just little random notes you can type up, and you can house your notes here if you want to do them that way. Or if you're the type of person that just wants everything in conjunction with your chapters, like we spoke about earlier, you can have it in your synopsis. You could have notes on each chapter and so forth, but this is another way to sort of have it in addition to everything else that you're doing. So I'm just going to collapse this, drag that to the trash, and now I have these three little things in the trash, but I'm going to collapse that. The other thing is Frontmatter. So this is kind of cool if you are at the stage where you want to send out your manuscript to beta readers, or maybe you want to send it out to an agent who's requested some material. You can go to manuscript format, title page, and then you can put your title, your full name, how many words, your name, address, and phone number, and then that is going to essentially be included when it compiles everything with the rest of your work. And then there's also an option here for doing it in paperback and things like that. If you say you self-publish or something, this might be a feature that you'd be interested in, or ebook, cover and dedication, things like that. Maybe you use Scrivener for this little front portion, or maybe you use a different piece of software for your formatting and stuff. But I tend to use the manuscript format one the most, just for the cover page, really. So this pane, I usually keep it. I don't delete it while I'm working on something. So what I'm going to do, though, to not get as distracted when I'm writing, I'm just going to collapse it and just keep it there, but I'm not going to delete it. And then you have another pane here, which is research, and that's kind of similar with the character sketch and things like that. You have different samples, and you can add character sketches and whatever you want to do. So you can play around with that and just start typing into it. I just tend to, when I'm writing, I keep my notes in the synopsis portion. That way it doubles in my outliner and in my corkboard if I happen to be using the corkboard at times. But so play around with the research tab, but not 100% necessary. Now, say you have typed everything you wanted to type, and now you want to export your manuscript. So this is another cool thing about Scrivener. You can export it in a whole variety of formats. So let's go to File, Compile, and you'll notice it'll say up here, what do I want to compile it for? You can compile it for print. You can make a PDF out of it. You can do a Word doc. You know, you can do a final draft, you can do a fountain screenplay, ebook, Kindle ebook. There's just so many different formats that you can use, which is really cool. So I'm just going to put compile for PDF. And here on your left-hand side, you can pick what font you want for your manuscript. So the standard is Manuscript Times, but you can mess with Courier. You know, you can do script or screenplay, but I'm just going to keep it at Manuscript Times. And then if you notice over here, we can add our manuscript for our Frontmatter, our title page, or we can keep it out. Let's just keep it in for the purposes of this example. And what do we want to include? We have our title page from the Frontmatter, chapter 1 with our 2 scenes, and then I'm just going to click chapter 2 untitled and chapter 50. Those were the sample folders I had added at the beginning, but if you remember, we never typed anything in there, so I don't want to compile stuff that doesn't have anything in there. Those are just for you know, sample purposes. So we had only typed into scene 1 and scene 2, so that's all I want compiled. But obviously if you're typing a whole bunch of chapters and a whole bunch of scenes, you want to make sure everything's checked. So then we're going to go to compile, and it's going to ask us where we want to compile everything. So I'll just put it on the desktop for right now. Export it. And then if we go to our desktop, you see it's already a PDF. Double click, and you'll notice that it has, you know, your sample cover page, which, you know, since we didn't really tweak it, this is just sort of the default information. Now my name, it had my name on there because Scrivener automatically has your name saved in one of the presets, and you can toggle with that. But basically if I go back and I change the name and the sample and the word counts, this is all going to be adjusted. And then if you scroll down, you'll see that this was sort of the gibberish we wrote for chapter 1. This is the first scene. And then we had a second scene, which is delineated by our little break here. And this would be the second scene for our novel. And then up here in the upper right is the header, which has the name of your novel, which we called sample novel, the page count. Normally the proper format would have our last name here, but that was not saved under the presets. So if we go back to Scrivener and we go back to compile, this is where we can change the name for our novel. I'm struggling right now to find where I can change the header, but once I find that out again, I can update that in the comments or something, or in the description below. But yeah, you can update the header and things like that. But yeah, basically that's sort of the Scrivener 101. There's a lot more you can do with it, but if you just want to write pages and you want to export it into a variety of formats, and you want it to be in manuscript form, and you don't want to be worrying about how do I format this and the font and like the spacing and everything, Scrivener is great to just have you focus on the writing. So just kind of to summarize, you know, to write, make sure you are in your editor, your middle pane here. So go to your chapter, or to the specific scene you're writing, and enter compose mode, type away, hit escape to get out of there. If you want to see the corkboard, click on your chapter, go to the corkboard, and you can organize all your index cards if you like doing it that way. If you want the outliner, go over to outliner, and you can, organize your things that way. If you don't like particular options up here, click here, select or deselect or add custom like we did, right? You can mess with that. And then of course with each scene, here in your inspector, you can add a little synopsis for each scene. So that's basically how to use Scrivener. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and leave a comment down below. And if you'd like any more videos like this, make sure you leave a comment and let me know what you'd like to see on my channel. I really like helping out fellow scribblers out there or aspiring scribblers out there. So that's basically how to use Scrivener, and there you have it.